Should you use cloud-based hosting versus traditional hosting? And let's talk about dedicated servers while we are at it. So I've been developing since the 90s, and the hosting that I'm used to is either traditional, where you rent hosting space from some provider, some hosting company. They put it on their physical servers, and away you go. You use a control panel like Plesk or cPanel to interact with your site. You upload your site via SSFTP. This is traditional. Then we go to the next step where you get pretty popular, where your sites are starting to generate a lot of traffic, and you start getting in trouble with your hosting accounts. That happened to me many, many years ago. So you have to upgrade to a dedicated server. So you get your own dedicated box. Now you could configure your own box and stick it in some company's warehouse where they plug it into their super high-speed internet. I wouldn't advise that, because then if there's any problems with that box, it's a big headache for you. You have to go in and blah, 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 blah. The better solution with a dedicated server is you just use the dedicated server's company's own hardware. They'll either have rack servers or whatever configurations they happen to have. Now, the good thing about that is that you have total control over your server. There's no other sites on there. There's nobody else using apps on there. So you have total control. You don't have to worry about somebody else doing something that could take down your site or your app. But there are some downsides to that as well. So the downside to having a dedicated server is that you have a single point of failure, meaning that if that server should fail, the hard drive fails, the RAM fails, the power supply fails, whatever, you got problems. So in that situation, you have to have some good backups in place, remote backups, so you should be daily backing up the databases, and you should have daily backups of the server itself, ideally onto another server. Although you could use a RAID array, so you have one disk drive for your main server, you have another disk drive that's cloning the main one continuously. So if the main drive fails, the new one picks up, and away you go. But that doesn't protect against other hardware problems. If the power supply should go, if the RAM goes bad, etc., etc. That being said, I've been doing dedicated serving. I've been running dedicated servers for 10 years or so, and I've had one hardware failure of the hard drive in that whole time. So the hardware is pretty solid these days. So it's, I'm not sure how scared you should be about that. Another thing is that with a dedicated server, you're kind of capped out. So capped, C-A-P, out, meaning if you start getting a huge spike in traffic, you're going to have to scramble to get a new dedicated server up and running to capture that growth of volume. How often does that happen? Very rare, so I wouldn't be so concerned about that. With the cloud-based hosting, there is the advantage that it's really easy to set up these days, especially with projects like DigitalOcean and Amazon's and Google. And you got all these tools now out there that make it really easy to go boom, 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 and you got your cloud-based hosting up and running. There's some complexity with it, though. I'm not sure if it's any more complex, come to think of it, as using a traditional server, but it's different, where these days uploading files with FTP is considered old school, bad form, although a lot of people still do it. But when you're getting into more advanced app development, everybody's pushing things through repos like GitHub or Bitbucket, and they're using SSH to move files around. This is all back-end server stuff. I won't get into the details here. The point is that when you're getting into cloud-based hosting, you're getting into a much more modern way of doing it. It's more secure. In fact, with our new servers, we don't even use passwords anymore. We use keys SSH keys to allow us to log in and navigate our servers. Anyway, that's a whole different video, a whole different subject. So yes, there are new methods today of hosting your web app or your websites. Cloud-based hosting is great for the fact that you can scale almost instantly. So if you get a spike of traffic, these days with with these systems. If you know what you're doing, you can just go bing, 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 and you're up and running in moments. Also, you have a lot of opportunities in terms of cloud backups, auto backups, and recoveries. It's just really sophisticated stuff. And in fact, cloud-based hosting, as I believe I mentioned in a previous video, has a lot of implications in terms of app development in of itself, because of the fact that you can clone your app and scale it in a very simple way. I call it dumb scaling, where you just clone your app and you just move it over, boom, 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 boom. It allows for you to have a much simpler architecture in terms of your own app. Prior to cloud-based hosting and these really interesting solutions that, to be honest with you, we're just getting into this year personally, it changes the way you can look at development in terms of your app. The app code base itself could be actually significantly simpler when it comes to scaling and backups and security and so forth because of cloud-based hosting. It's kind of a cool thing, to be honest with you. And actually it goes to one of the basic principles in object-oriented programming, separation of concerns. Now I'm sort of stretching how people interpret that, but essentially by using cloud-based hosting, you're able to extract out of your core app a lot of security issues and scaling issues, which is a good thing, because whenever you break your app down into finer grained components, meaning you simplify your app so you have one aspect of your app that just handles logging, another aspect of your app just handles processing of orders. So now with cloud-based hosting, you can extract the need for scaling functionality. Scaling meaning if you have to expand the power of your site and so that it can handle a lot more traffic. Because of cloud-based hosting, you can extract that component, that complexity out of your core app and utilize the cloud infrastructure to simplify your core app's code base, which is very cool because it simplifies a lot of things. It actually can extend the longevity of an older app that may not have been engineered for scaling initially. So instead of having to go in there and try and mess with an old code base, which is like a disaster, you can just relegate that, push that into the cloud-based services. I don't know if this is probably a little bit too high level and abstract for some of you guys, but the point is that cloud-based hosting is more complex in certain regards, but it's more secure in terms of raw security. It's more secure in terms of being able to scale more easily. It's more secure in terms of being able to have a more robust backup and recovery built into it because of the nature of what it is. Now, in terms of buggy old code bases, that's just the way it goes. Just to remind you, one of my friends said there's crappy code and crappier code. He used other words, but you get the idea. And I was listening to some people talking about how YouTube, which is one of the biggest companies out there, run by one of the biggest companies out there, they have some lingering problems within YouTube now, some bugs, because they have some old wacky code floating around in YouTube that causes problems, and they're trying to work their way around this. And this is YouTube, so if Google, YouTube has problems with their code because it's a 10-year-old code base, don't be worried about your code getting a little problematic over times as well. That being said, one of the best ways to keep your code from becoming messy and dirty is to keep your code simple as possible. Go for simple as possible, because simple code is easier to maintain than complex code that does some fancy stuff. So that's about it for now. Went off on a tangent, but that's what I do. Bye-bye.